NFL draft combine wrapping up today and tomorrow. Got some receivers running the 40-yard dash. That is always the headline. But for the New York Jets, it appears to be narrowing down to what I would guess is going to be a two-man race with a heavy favorite at the top. And I think that heavy favorite is going to be linebacker slash edge player Arvell Reese, with David Bailey being the second behind him, and then a gap in probably Ruben Bain and Caleb Downs with minimal chance. And then that's probably the field unless Ty Simpson starts shooting up and they get a little desperate there. I don't envision that. So if this is a pie chart, I would guess that Arvell Reese not only has the plurality, but the majority of the pie chart. Like Arvell Reese has a higher chance than the field, to me. And you never know how much different GMs will weigh this, but do you want to be the team that didn't draft Arvell Reese? Right? That always has to weigh in the back of your mind when you can kind of see the concept, the idea of a Micah Parsons type of player. Now, in terms of riders and fallers, you don't know because you get like this combine bump, right? Guys who run fast. Oh, he's top 15, he's top 20. And then in a couple of weeks, it'll probably regress like back down to in between where they were before and where they are now. Obviously, it matters to some extent. The teams show up and they use this data for sure. Obviously, my guy Ruben Bain, we confirmed he's a turtle. He'd still be my preference. I don't know how much of a fit he is, depending on how much 3-4-4-3 they want to do. I still think Ruben Bain is. I'm very confident he'll be the most impactful defensive lineman in this class. Absolute math changer against the run. He's my guy. I watched the college football playoffs end. Every game in the college football playoffs. I went back and I watched 4 or 5 more of his games. I knew he wasn't as athletic as Reese and Bailey. I saw everything I need to see. For me personally, from now until the draft, Ruben Bain is my guy. But is he the Jets guy? I would guess probably more towards Reese and Bailey, particularly Reese, because I think it's just the rare power that he plays with. It's just different. Because if you look at the other two guys, particularly the front 7 players, like Bain, where he's a frame outlier and not a great athlete. That's why he didn't test. He wouldn't have ran like a 4.5 40 or whatever. Then you have Bailey, who's a production monster. He had pretty good size. I think Bailey's camp is going to be pretty happy with how he did this weekend. Coming in at the actual measured weight and height that he was listed at, a little over 6'3", clear the 250-pound mark. You're very happy about that, I think, if you're Bailey. But with Reese, Bailey is you have some questions against the run. Not that he'd be a liability, but some questions, and obviously not the bendiest player. With Bain, not the best athlete, and he's got stubby arms. With Reese, it's just a matter of you don't have the sample size of him doing the true linebackery stuff that Sonny Styles has done or true edge work. But from a physical tools perspective, unlike Bailey and unlike Bain, there's no limiting factor. There's no limiting factor to him being an excellent 3-4 outside linebacker. Right? And then Sonny Styles. So I would say like Reese, a gap, Bailey, a gap, and then like Styles, Baines, Downs. Right? And that's pretty much it. I don't think they're going to take a receiver. So I think that would be the conversation. Now, I mean, Sonny Styles, there's certain guys like with Reese. Yeah, Reese and Bailey tested like 10% more athletic than I thought they would. So I was like, okay, kind of on par. Bailey, I knew he'd run in the 4.5s, but he was like 4.51. That's a really impressive time for his size. Reese, 4.47 is just crazy. But we knew Sonny Styles was an elite athlete, but did we know he was like the most athletic linebacker ever? Maybe not. Crazy, mid 4.4s. He was bigger than Reese, like over 6'5", a couple pounds heavier, long ass arms, like in NBA slam dunk contest worthy vertical leap, over 11 feet on the broad jump, which is preposterous. Even they had him doing some like flexibility things where you grab the board behind your back, and it's like, dude, this guy is an absolute alien. So Styles, I think, in the conversation because he could also be a linebacker who could do some edge stuff. But if you listen to the way that Arvell Reese answered questions, it's pretty clear that he is very open to playing edge and that he's talked to some teams who kind of view him in that lens. I really think he's going to be a 4-3 outside linebacker or even be able to gain 12 pounds and be a 4-3 end. He's just so powerful. I think he's going to play a lot of edge. Obviously, being a stand-up backer in a 3-4 would allow him to tap a little bit more into some of the off-ball stuff that he's really good at. And there's a floor with Reese that I think is higher than some of his skeptics might assume, just because of the run defense he's going to bring, of the blitzing he's going to bring, and the athleticism. Where I don't worry about him being like a Vernon Gholston or Quentin Coples like type of Jets bust, and he also loves football. So not too worried about him busting, but obviously he's a bit more of a projection. But I don't think it takes that much of an imagination to imagine Arvell Reese kicking ass as a 3-4 outside linebacker. So I think he's going to be the favorite. And the combine just confirmed, like, yeah, this dude moves different. You watch him turning the corner on like those bag drills, and it's like, man, he was a little lighter than I thought. Like I thought a good weight for him would have been in the upper 240s. He was 241, and his arms were a little shorter. So Reese is definitely he'd be small. He'd be small for an edge player, but nothing crazy. And I just don't worry about the play strength. So I'm not too worried about his weight. Obviously, he's gonna be 20 years old until the end of August. So if I had to guess now, I think Arvell Reese is going to be a Jet. And they're probably looking for some sort of stand-up rusher. That's probably what they want. Obviously, Reese can help them mitigate their deficiencies at their off-ball linebacker spots too. So the Jets need so much help on their defense. They might want to go with the guy who they think can help in the most areas. And that they probably view that as Arvell Reese. But Sonny Styles, I think, did pop himself into top 5 conversations if he already wasn't. If he already wasn't, I think Sonny Styles, if you're the Giants, I think you got to consider taking him. And if the Commanders, if he's there at 7, you're sprinting the board to the podium. So Sonny Styles at 16, pipe dream to begin with. Now that is absolutely delusional. Like there's no way he's going to make it to 16. And you look at some other guys for pick 16, like Kenyon Sadiq running 4.39. I, I don't know. Could the Jets take him at 16 if he's there? I'll say this. I think that Mason Taylor's inline blocking being very impressive for his rookie year opens the door to that. It opens the door to that because then he's essentially, like how the Raiders use Brock Bowers. I don't think Sadiq is as good as a prospect as Bowers because then he wouldn't even go to 16. But where they had that inline tight end like Michael Mayer, and you're kind of running a mix of like 12 and 11 knee personnel, where Bowers can play in the slot, and you can get him as a move blocker, and you can kind of punish teams whether they want to go. If you want to run nickel, well then we can have our tight end, kicking the ass of your nickel corner and in the run game. If you want to play heavy, he's going to burn your linebackers. So I think Sadiq is an interesting player to allow the Jets to dictate personnel. I think he'd definitely be in consideration for pick 16 if they want to come away with a defensive player first and a weapon second. I think there's a good chance that they could view Sadiq as the best pass catcher that's on the board at pick 16. And I like his capability as a blocker, particularly on the move. On the move, he could do some damage for you as a blocker. And you got these safeties down there. It's so hard to know because it's like, oh, like everyone's going in the top 20 now. Like Dylan Thieneman is going in the top 20. Okay. I guess one of those safeties, you could view them at pick 16, EMW, Thieneman, who ran under 4.4 and was like one of the most athletic safety testers. So you could view him as a chess piece on your back end. I know the Cooper DeJean comps are lazy just because like freaky athletic white dude, but I'm sure some teams could view him as that type of player. Is that worth 16? Maybe. I really think that Caleb Downs is not going to be in the conversation at 2 because I think because of there are more veteran options at safety than a lot of other positions. Right. I know my guy Dom C has been pounding the table for a potential Minka Fitzpatrick trade. You got, 4 or 5 free agents you feel pretty good about compared to other positions. And then you have Emmanuel McNeil Warren and Dylan Thieneman, who seem to be almost consensus, top 25 to 30 players themselves. So I just, the way I look at it with Caleb Downs is obviously if he's Troy Polamalu, yeah, of course. If he's Troy Polamalu, if he's Ed Reed, of course, of course, you take him at two. If you know he's going to be that level of safety, if you know he's going to be Kyle Hamilton, you take him at two. But it's a mix, right? Because you're like, what percent chance do you think this guy is going to be really good at his position versus what percent chance do you think this guy's really impactful at his position? And then there's the trade-offs we talked about last year with the Jets taking offensive tackles the last 2 years over tight ends. I think the conversation was always, like with Membu last year, I felt that it's like, okay, he's either going to be an elite guard, which is a $20 million player, or a good tackle, which is a $20 million player. Whereas if you take the non-premium position, they have to be elite, otherwise you really bungled the pick, right? Because if the Jets took like let's say Olu Fashanu, let's say he ends up being a solid, a good left tackle for 12 years. Maybe makes one Pro Bowl, never like a first team All Pro, never in the conversation with the top one or two guys in the league. And he holds on the blind side for you for 12 years. He was the 10th, 11th pick, whatever he was. Like, yeah, you're not losing sleep over that. But if you take a safety, you take an off-ball linebacker, you take a running back, and they do that, you're talking top 10. You really have to. So that's the conversation there. You got to weigh all that together. And I think when the Jets took Olu in 2024, I think Joe Douglas's thought process was, man, a left tackle is just something you kind of have to have. It's a building block you kind of have to have. This draft class has more options of them than like any in recent memory. I just got to leave the draft class with one, right? That was kind of, and then we'll figure the other stuff out later. That was kind of their philosophy, and I think that was a fine philosophy. And then with this draft, I see it kind of similar as like on offense. What do you need? What do you really need? Okay, like left tackle, obviously quarterback, like left tackle, wide receiver one. Beyond that, teams could do it different ways, but that's the starting point. Like you need a quarterback, you need serviceable tackle play, and at least one passing threat that's keeping defensive coordinators up at night. From there, how good is your coaching? How good is that quarterback? You know, you could build teams different ways, but all good teams at least had that. All really good teams at least had that. Now you look at defensively, what do all good teams at least really have? And I think you have to start with you have to have a front seven game wrecking kind of force that other teams have to like dedicate multiple bodies to and keep aware of at all times. Otherwise, they're gonna like wreck your day. You kind of have to have one of those, and you're at pick two. I think you got to view either Reese, Bailey, or Bain as one of those, and get one of those guys, and figure out the other stuff, right? Because you're picking at two, you got to get one of those type of players. And safety, you know, you get some free agents. You take one later in the draft. I think you're picking that high. You got to get that skill set that is a foundational piece of your defense. That you don't want to be picking this high again next year. And if you are picking this high again next year, your first pick is probably going to be a quarterback, right? That's why I think they'll go that over receiver. And even if the talent was equal, just from a team building perspective, once you have a wide receiver one, now again, you can have two number one receivers. I welcome it. The Jets should absolutely take Mekhi Lemon if he's there at 16. I would trade up a couple spots for Mekhi Lemon. Omar Cooper Jr. at 16. Like I think a pass catcher is the optimal pick at 16. So I'm still down. Like go get another legitimate playmaker to complement Garrett Wilson, make the quarterback of next year's life easier. But just from a team building perspective, like, what moves the needle more? If you have a good wide receiver one is getting a secondary, like really good receiver, more impactful than getting a massively disruptive game wrecking defensive force when you don't have any of that. Right. And I don't And I know people get hung up on like, well, we have to leave with this. Oh, you can't have AD Mitchell as a starting receiver. Like, dude, if you don't want Ty Simpson, who cares? Because if you don't want a young quarterback this year and it's Marcus Mariota, who cares if Marcus Mariota doesn't have the best wide receiver too this year? By the time you get your quarterback in here, you have to have a really good wide receiver too. Sure. So if next year, if they take a quarterback with their first round pick, say they trade 2 first round picks to come up and get him, and they take a second wide receiver with their latest first round pick, they take a wide receiver at 26 overall. Okay, you got it done. Who cares of the timeline of stuff? If you don't, because nobody wants Ty Simpson, so who cares? Like, why am I sweating? Like, he's staying up at night of like who Marcus Mariota's wide receiver two is. If you don't want a quarterback in, you just got to take the best talent as it comes to you and start plugging holes. That's why it's almost like completely stress free. Like you don't even care. You just take the talent as it comes to you. Oh, a off ball linebacker is the best player at this spot. You just take it. If one side of the ball is weaker than the other, or it doesn't come out as even as you wanted, like okay, I'm viewing again. If they're not taking Ty Simpson, which seems like nobody wants to do anyway, I'm viewing the next 2 off seasons as one entire off season. So we have 5 first round. What is it? We have 5 first round picks to me, and 3 second round picks. It's all one draft to me. You don't get the wide receiver in these first 3 picks. You get it in the next because I like if Marcus Mariota has to throw to AD Mitchell, he'll survive. And the Jets are not trying to win a Super Bowl next year anyway. So just take it all as it comes to you. Yep, Jake, I'll see you in a little bit, man. Thank you, sir. Even if we get Minka, we still need another safety. Maybe I do think that Malachi Moore would be best served as a third safety, but we'll see. I mean, he looked like an NFL player. I think that I definitely came away pretty impressed with. I wish it was a bigger sample size because they didn't get hurt, but I came away pretty impressed with Mason Taylor and Azariah Thomas's rookie seasons. Considering how young they were and they were thrown in there on a bad team, I thought they looked like NFL players. Malachi Moore, who knows because it's kind of hard when the secondary around you is so trash. Like you're probably trying to do multiple jobs at once. There was even that clip of Aaron Glenn saying, like, I just need you to do your job. So maybe he was just trying to play hero ball because there was like a bunch of practice squad players around him, but so we'll see. But yeah, I think there's just options at safety. And they're like, I think within the first few days of free agency, whether it is the Minka trade, whether it is peeling off an expensive contract for Jaquan Brisker or Cam Curl or Kobe Bryant, I think they're gonna make a really significant investment at safety that kind of says like, okay, you Caleb Downs at 2 is probably just not going to be a thing. And then Caleb Downs at and Ruben Bain will go to like the Bengals and the Chiefs at 9 and 10, and they'll be laughing their absolute asses off because they got like probably will age to be the 2 best defensive players in the draft class, but they didn't do great at the underwear Olympics. But I mean, you do sleep at night. You do sleep at night knowing you got an elite athlete, right? Like it is football, so that does matter. Get Reeves, trade up for Styles, and get Jeremiah Smith next year. Yeah, I still think that. Well, it depends. I mean, like how low is Styles dropping? Because I don't think you're trading up like it's a 7. That's just too expensive. Because then the team is going to want like a next year's first round pick. No way I'm doing that. So the only way I would want to trade up from 16 is if pick 44 was like the piece. I want to give up more than that. So if Sonny Styles is there at 11, um, and you want to jump the Cowboys to go get him, and the other team is willing to take pick 44, and that's it. Yeah, I would do it. And you get Reese and you get Styles, and then you get a whatever receiver at 33, and you're good to go. Because I understand you have so many holes, but dude, like elite players are just such force multipliers for you that they almost like cover multiple spots. Like yeah, for Styles, I would do it. For a receiver, I don't know just because of how much I love Omar Cooper Jr. So that's just my personal preference. Like would I trade pick 44 to come up for one of the receivers? I think I would stay put and take Omar Cooper Jr. and want another starter at pick 44. But I view Styles as different. Like Styles to me is my third like favorite preference in the class. So Styles out, he's a player I'd be fine if they took him at 2. So if I'd be fine if they took him at 2, then I'd be fine if they use 16 and 44 to get him because 16 and 44 is on the points is less valuable than 2, I'm sure. Reese has the highest ceiling. I think I would agree with that. Draft the guy with 73 QB pressures last year, Bailey. Well, that's what Bailey has that nobody can deny. Like Bailey has the best production, and the production is it's not subjective. Like here's what I did. I got after the passer. Um, and he had pretty good production the previous year too. I still think, to be honest, within like 5 minutes of shaking hands with Carl Dunbar, I think Arvo Reese is going to be a better pass rusher than David Bailey. I He's more powerful. He is more fluid in his movements. Like David Bailey is kind of moves like the Tin Man. It doesn't make any sense because he's so explosive and fast. And like, how are you that rigid when you're that explosive and fast? Like, what is going on? Um, so I think Reese is a significantly better prospect than David Bailey, to be honest. But I would also get after like, hey, we want a guy that we know is proven to do the job that we're drafting him to do. And he has proven that he could do that. Do you think there's any chance in the world Ty Simpson falls to the second round? Yeah, I think there is. I mean, remember last year, Shadur Sanders was going to be a top 10 pick. Now, there may be some non football stuff like his interviews or teams didn't like him or whatever opinions we could have on that. Like, yeah, he probably should have been higher than a fifth rounder. Um, but yeah, and we've seen that multiple times. There's like how high is Jackson Dart gonna go? Or even Tyler Shug was like gonna be a fourth rounder and he goes high. And then McCord, it was like, is he a third rounder? And he goes to the sixth. So yeah, there's definitely a chance that Ty Simpson falls. It's just a matter of there's a few teams that could really take him if they just don't, like him enough, he could fall. And I think if he did, if he's still on the board at maybe the Patriots wouldn't trade, but like 30 or even 32, if he's there at 32, the Seahawks are going to be getting calls, right? For teams to come up and jump the Jets and get that fifth year option. I'd come up one spot to take Ty Simpson. I wouldn't do it at 16 because I still think that is too big of an investment to where the owner is going to tell the next staff if he doesn't look great. You play Ty Simpson 12 games and he looks like Jimmy Clausen, which if you look like Jimmy Clausen your rookie season, there's a 97% chance you're a bust. So, yeah, then, the new regime is going to, or the owner is going to tell the new regime, hey, go fix Ty Simpson instead of drafting, Arch Manning or whatever. So you don't want that. Like that's the opportunity cost to me. You don't want to put yourself in that position. Where I go back to the Saints, right? We'll never know, but I truly think if the Saints drafted Chuck, whatever was he, pick 40 or whatever, and if he looked horrendous, like unplayable, and the Saints ended up with the number one pick, I think they're probably taking Fernando Mendoza, right? And cutting their losses with Chuck. Um, so you can do that. in that range. Still a top 40 pick. You don't like to do it. You don't like to waste it, but you could do it. Whereas at pick 16, I don't know if like that's where money and ownership kind of gets into there. And also, you don't want to you want pick 16 to be a starter who can play for you. Like you also don't want to, have another massive hole where it's like, hey man, that could have been a wide receiver too. That could have been another starting edge player. Gino is intriguing. At least he has a weapon and Garrett Wilson protection. Yeah, Gino, look, he goes into the boat of obviously massively flawed, but I would wager so I think that Geno Smith would play better than he did with the Raiders last year. Like, I don't know if he completely became that dry cleaned right away when the Raiders they had so many injuries on their offensive line and their coaching staff was egregious. Pete Carroll hired like his nephew or whatever to be the offensive line coach. And the Pete Carroll, that was a disastrous staff move. A disastrous staff. That the Raiders were a horrendous spot last year. So yeah, Gino, uh, in with the other names, like no, like yeah, any name you say, the response could be, "Oh my god, are you kidding me?" And it's like, dude, but yeah, compared to compared to the Marcus Mariota of it all, yeah. Is Geno Smith probably a better quarterback than Marcus Mariota in 2026? Yeah, I would probably say yes. I don't know if he wants to come back to the Jets, so I don't think it would be likely, but yeah, I don't think they want to tie themselves to Simpson, especially if they take him at 16. But who knows? Yeah, Bo Nix went from round 3 to pick 11. Yeah, you're right. I think that's a good call out. Bo Nix. JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy was not at this time of the draft, at the combine of his draft year, he was not being talked about as a top 15 pick, right? Yeah, QB, pass rusher, or ball hawk, we have none. Yeah. You just see how limiting it is for teams defensively, like the Ravens last year, where they had, they had Kyle Hamilton. Um, they have, what, Humphrey. They have some guys who have made like Pro Bowls and been good on the back end of their defense. Um, but if you don't have uh like a legit pass rusher weapon who can wreak havoc, like it's just so limiting to your defense. But I'll leave it there. I'm hopping over to the Jake Asman show. See you guys over there. If you want to hit the thumbs up on your way out, that'd be cool. And we'll talk all soon.